Remember the build back in the day called Bubble Trouble from 2014? Yes, well that's the build, and a lot of things have changed both with me and the build. This video I'm going to give you a stamina-based Templar called Bubble Trouble and based off of my original 2014 build. You're going to want to watch this video because Templar and Stamina Templar specifically is about the only thing on the battlefield this patch in the Deadlands Update 32 that can hang with Dragonknights. And in this video, I'm going to go over why you should play the Stamina Templar, what's new specifically with the Templar. That could be skills, gear, champion points, and other mechanics that have changed in the game to make Templar effective on the battlefield. We're also going to talk about the usual suspects, different gear options that you can go with, flexible options for average players and advanced, along with skills and how you can swap things in and out to be effective depending on your playstyle. And then champion points, miscellaneous things like Munda Stone, consumables, race choice, and more. So we're going to talk about what's changed first, and we're going to start with Living Dark and Rune Focus. Both were updated in Blackwood, Update 30, that has relevance to what we're doing in this specific build. So Living Dark, which is a morph that predominantly been used for magic builds, was changed to scale off of max health, meaning the effectiveness of this skill is based on max health. Moreover, Restoring Focus was changed as well to be based off of, you guessed it, max health. Why this is relevant is because the Templar specifically can get a lot of the survivability through heals per second and cleansing, where previously you had to stack a lot of max stamina to be survivable. Not anymore. Max health is very, very good. Not to mention that the Balanced Warrior passive, along with the Agility passive for medium armor and Orc, give you a lot of amps to weapon damage. And weapon damage is specifically what scales your proc sets. Speaking of recent changes in talking about proc sets, these can now critically strike. So you can see as this build unfolds, what we're getting to is the premise here, a big bubble with Living Dark with a lot of max health for survivability, and then stacking weapon damage over our max stat like stamina, because it scales very well. Speaking of scaling, Power of the Light previously scaled off of max stamina, now it's weapon damage, and this is our primary single target kill tool. Also something to be aware of is Magic Dragonknights got buffed significantly. They're absolutely incredible, and I'll have builds on those specifically later, but the things you need to know is they have great resource sustain, they hit very hard, and they have a lot of dot pressure, which is actually quite useful for us to know because the Stamplar has Extended Ritual, one of the most powerful abilities in the game because it can cleanse, get rid of those dots over and over and over, though it does cost a lot of magic. So we're able to go toe-to-toe with these Dragonites that you're going to see due to the cleansing of their negative effects and dot pressure, along with the heals per second stacking max health. Previously in the patches in Elder Scrolls Online, Mechanical Acuity was your go-to set for damage, giving you 100% critical for a short time, along with having no critical damage cap. Both of those things have been changed. So Mechanical Acuity is nerfed significantly, and now you can only stack 125% critical damage amps. So this makes other sets that used to be relevant a lot more relevant today. Not to mention that proc sets can critically strike, not only monster helms, but 5 pieces. And then one of the staples in Stamplar, Deadly Strike, was nerfed and reduced in damage, making that it's not the go-to staple in stamina-based Templar DPS, both PvE and PvP. Essentially, what does this all mean? We're going to stack a lot of HP for survival. We're going to stack a lot of weapon damage for damage. And then we're going to build around resource sustain. That way we can use both of our resources pool. Stamina primarily for dodging, doing damage, and then magic primarily for using survival with Extended Ritual and Living Dark. So the pros and the cons of this build. Simple offensive rotation. This is not complex. You can seriously just stampede in and biting jabs if you want to and be very effective. It has great resource sustain with the specific class kit along with the gear sets that we're going to choose. And it has decent mobility. Essentially, it's a faster, harder hitting Magpar. The downside is it's melee dominant. Some people don't like to be upfront and aggressive, and this sure is. And there's no unavoidable CC like a Sorcerer's Streak, so you're going to have to play the CC mechanic a little bit different to make sure you time your burst window, which which I'll show you. So if that sounds good, let's go ahead and jump into the gear section and explain what and why I'm using what I'm using. Number one is the Monster Helm Magma Incarnate from Dread Cellar Dungeon Waking Flames DLC. The one piece is unique among Monster Helms, giving you both magic recovery and stamina recovery, perfect for a Stamplar that's going to use both pools. Not to mention the two pieces great solo or in a group, giving you minor courage and minor resolve, increasing your weapon and spell damage and armor for 10 seconds, if and when you cast a single target heal ability. We have plenty of those with Living Dark and Rally, to name a couple. And also you have some group utility once this bounces around, but usually it goes just to you. So we're going to have a lot of weapon damage and a lot of resistances. There's tons of flexible options depending on who you are and how you play this build. One being Engine Guardian for sustain. If you struggle with that, use a different 5-piece, try that. Malabeth or Scourge Harvest is really good for healing and survival. Balorgs is great for burst damage if you want big Dawnbreakers, and Zols is great for counter ganking if you get tired of stealth Nightblades. Up next, we're going to go with our front bar proc set, and that's Unleash Terror for Castle Thorn Dungeon Storm Thorn DLC. The 5-piece, when you deal direct damage with essentially a gap closer. You cut through the enemy, dealing bleed damage for 10 seconds. Over the duration, you apply the Hemorrhaging status effect every tick. This ability can occur once every 10 seconds per target and scales off the higher weapon or spell damage. It's an AoE bleed that has a really powerful debuff, Hemorrhage. What that essentially does is reduce health by 10% via minor mangle, and it's AoE. So running around 6,000 weapon damage or so, you can get a massive area with Stampede, our gap closer, and another bleed effect, and lowering HP. So not only does this hit hard, not only does it do dot pressure, but the debuff is extremely strong. There's a whole bunch of different options that you can use if you don't like this setup. Deadly Strikes, while it is nerf, it's very simple for people that just want to hit jabs over and over. New Moon, it's a craftable set, and it has a bunch of weapon damage on your front bar when you need it, and it's very simple and easy to obtain. Essence Thief is good, but you have to pick up a little orb, a little green circle around, but it's going to give you a good sustain, healing, and some damage. And don't sleep on Kind Marcher's Cruelty. This is a new set from Deadlands and provides a massive AoE debuff, kind of like the Daedric Trickery of PvP. I don't think it fits on the Stamplar nearly as well as Unleash Terror the way I play it, but it's a really good alternative and easy to get a hold of. Now we're going to go with a back bar set, and this is typically what I run for defensive. I don't play glass cannon, so I go with a defensive back bar and an offensive front bar. There's two essential options for you. The one I had the best bet with is Wretched Vitality. This is a craftable set in the Deadlands. Very easy to get a hold of. What this is going to do while in combat, applying a major buff or debuff to a target grants you 260 magic and stamina recovery for 15 seconds. While you apply a minor buff or debuff, it's going to grant you 130 magic and stamina recovery for 15 seconds. Both stack on top of each other. So when you're on your back bar and you use your rune, one is going to grant you Mending, and the other one's going to grant you your major resolve. So you're going to be able to keep these up at 100% time. When I'm using this setup, I have almost 3,000 stamina recovery and 1,500 magic recovery and no CP PvP with a tripod running. Another option that I ran quite a bit was Daedric Trickery, and this is a good set that I've ran with tons and tons of different PvP builds. It's essentially going to give you one defensive major buff at a time. So how you use it is light attack or do some ability on your back bar that causes damage, and you get this buff for a very long time. It's also craftable, making it very easy to obtain. Now you can go with a couple other options if you do not want to listen to me and you want to go glass cannon. One, if I was playing in a group on my back bar, I'd go Powerful Assault from Imperial City. This is going to give you weapon damage and spell damage to you and your group around you, and you can easily apply it using Resolving Vigor on your back bar before you charge in. Great damage set, especially playing in a group. Another ultra powerful back bar set, if you want to go full glass cannon, Clever Alchemist. Pop a potion of move ability, get about 20 seconds of 675 weapon and spell damage, and you're going to hit like an absolute Mack truck. Though you're going to sacrifice a lot of sustain and a lot of survivability, just up to you. And that leaves one slot left, which is for Death Dealer's Fate. This is going to be our mythic of choice. We've already talked about the effectiveness of stacking health, and this goes a long way to doing that. After prolonged fights in 1 minute in combat, you're going to get 2,680 magic, stamina, and health across the board, basically giving us about 38,000 health and no CP PvP, along with 6,000 weapon damage and a proc set on our front bar. We hit very hard and we're very survivable thanks to a Death Dealer's Fate Magma Incarnate combo. If you don't have Mythics, don't want to use them, you can run either another piece of Trainee. We're going to put one piece of Trainee for max stats on our body, but run another one or an arena weapon and just change up the build if you don't have a Mythic or you do not like it. Now let's take a look at the gear chart here. So what I highly recommend is running 5 medium so we can use shuffle, and then 2 heavy. The traits on the armor are up to you. Reinforced heavy in the chest is considered best in slot, with prismatic glyphs on the chest, legs, and head. Run stamina glyphs on the rest, and then at least 3 impenetrable, and sometimes I run 3 impen and 3 well fitted. It just depends on how many roly-polies I'm gonna do. On the weapon, what I run is a 2-handed sword if you can get a hold of it. Unleash Terror, sharpened trait with a berserking or weapon damage glyph. That way when I charge in or I use a fully charged heavy attack, I'm gonna get a massive amount of burst weapon damage. We're gonna use poisons on our back bar, sword, and shield. I'm gonna run defending or powered trait on the sword, sturdy on the shield with a health enchant, and then run those poisons so I can light attack / use an ability and proc those to get a little bit of pressure and immobilizations. And then on the jewelry, you're gonna run swift, at least 2 swift, purple quality if you can. That's gonna give you nearly the mobility that Wild Hunt does without having to actually use the Mythic. So this image here is my buff stats with Wretched Vitality on my back bar using a tripod. 2,900 stamina recovery, almost 1,500 magic recovery, and just about 6,000 weapon damage with 25,000 spell and physical resistance. I would hypothetically aim for about 1,800 crit resistance if you can. If you want to go more roly-poly, go with about 3 well-fitted and try to get at least 1,200 crit resistance so you don't get one shot. So the physical penetration's around 3,900, which is quite low, and that's where you could slot in Balorgs for a lot more penetration and doing a lot more burst. It just depends on what you want, what you lack, and how your survivability is. Now let's go switch and talk about the skills to make this build work. I'm going to go ahead and use a 2-hander weapon choice front bar, and there's plenty of different options. Dual wield, you can run a 2H back bar, but the reason I like 2-hander is for 2 specific reasons. One reason is for the follow-up passive. When you complete a fully charged heavy attack, your next direct damage attack within 7 seconds deals an additional 10%. So how you can use this, whether you're charging or not, is fully charged heavy attack into a crescent or a dawnbreaker, whichever ultimate you choose, for a big, massive amount of damage. This adds a lot of damage without any gear. That 10% for the next direct damage is such a vital skill to use. Also, the Battle Rust passive, increasing your stamina recovery by 30% for 10 seconds after killing a target. Don't get me wrong, Dual Wield has other passes, but these two make this build really good. Not to mention, it has a stamina-based gap closer, and Stampede as a gap closer is massive AoE, hits like a truck, and is very, very good to use. Speaking of Stampede, that's specifically our first ability and what I use to close the distance and do our AoE, along with proccing our 5-piece Unleash Terror set. Don't just sit here and spam this endlessly. Really kind of use it as a dot on your primary target, and I would not spam it over that. As long as you have that 10-second debuff on the target, assuming they don't cleanse it, just cast it and then go back to your rotation. Next ability up is Rally. This is going to give you Major Brutality, increasing our weapon damage by 20%, and Minor Endurance, which increases stamina recovery. As you can see, we're going to have a lot of stamina recovery. Not to mention, this is a burst heal, so you're going to want to maintain this 100% of the time, and when the Rally gets a bit lower, you can recast it or let the entire duration fall off for a big, massive burst heal. Next ability up is Power of Light. This is essentially our hardest hitting single target bursting tool. It's going to kind of fill up like a balloon, soaking up damage, and at the end of 6 seconds, it's going to proc and blow up. This is one of the hardest hitting abilities in the game if you use it right. So typically how I use this is I cast it on a target before I charge in. That way when I hit them with Stampede, I'm going to hit them with Unleash Terror, I'm going to hit them with that bleed damage, and then when it soaks up completely, it's going to blow up at that end of 6 seconds. And I cannot tell you how many people I've killed as they're running away thinking they're safe, and then boom, Power of the Light goes off, dead. Biting Jabs is up next. Essentially, this is going to strike in front of you, does AoE, does really good single target damage. It's your main spammable that you don't really need 2 other abilities for. You don't need a single target and you don't need an AoE ability. This does it all in one. The downside of Biting Jabs is it's a 1-second channel, so it kind of leaves you open for a second. Assuming you're not taking damage, this is where you're throttled down with. So Living Dark is our final skill up, and this is the #1 survivability skill. It's going to heal you based on your max health, and it's going to heal every half second. So if you have 2-3 people beating you up, or you have a bunch of dots on you, this is going to proc over and over and over, and the heals per second is absolutely staggering, especially if you stack a lot of max health. The downside of it is it costs a lot of max magic to maintain this, and it only has a 6-second duration. So you're going to need to cast this preemptively before charging in. You're going to need to cast this reactively actively as soon as you take pressure, along with your other heals to survive. Now we have the ultimate of choice. So there's two really strong options. Number one, and my preferred ultimate, is Crescent Sweep. It's burst AoE damage. It's extremely low cost, and it goes in 360 degrees. The strengths of Crescent Sweep is, yes, it's magic damage, but it's going to hit incredibly hard. And enemies in your path will be hit for 60% more damage. So you can basically use this almost as another ability in your rotation, and you want to hit this before Power of the Light goes off so it soaks up all the damage possible. Another alternative is Dawnbreaker of Smiting. This is a nice AoE damage tool and damage over time, along with doing extra damage to Werewolf and Vampire. Upside of this, it hits really hard and there's some good passives for slotting it. The downside, it's not nearly as cheap as Crescent Sweep, and usually I use Crescent Sweep. Let's go to our back bar and talk about what we use for defensives, and that's Sword and Shield. The reason I use Sword and Shield is primarily reverberating back. This is our 4 key on our bar, and it's a great single target stun. It's almost like it takes a little bit more time to CC break. And how you use this is light attack to proc poisons, hit reverb bash, and as soon as you hit the button, you animation cancel it by bar swapping. So someone might be stuck in this animation and stun for about a second, and that lets you throttle down with biting jabs, killing them. I can't tell you how much this combination, if you get it right and practice it, will add to your kill potential. Essentially, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just practice in the open field on some NPCs. Hit the ability and bar swap seamlessly, like da-da, and then go to your biting jab spam and they will die. Another reason I use the Sword and Shield is for the defensive spell wall. This is insane self-survivability tool. No, it doesn't have a whole lot of group application, but if you have a sorcerer just peppering you at range, you got a bunch of DKs just spamming leap on you, and you need that mitigation for holding block, but you don't have the stamina. This is what I hit. Now moving to the front, our survivability kit is Restoring Focus. This is a rune you put down. If you stand in the rune, it's going to heal you, but more or less it's going to give you Major Resolve, proccing your Wretched Vitality. Also on our back bar, we have Extended Ritual. This is going to cleanse up to 5 negative effects. It's going to heal over time while we're in that 12-meter radius. Living Dark and Extended Ritual are the two survivability mechanisms, especially when facing Dragonites. Next ability up is Shuffle. This is going to give us Major Evasion, which is primarily why we use it. We also get a mobilization immunity for a short period of time. So you're going to want to maintain this because AoE damage is just everywhere, and this prevents you from dying and taking a lot of damage. And now we have Resolving Vigor as the last ability on our bar. It's the heal over time, selfish, solo, so it can proc Magma Incarnate. So you're going to have to use a combination of Resolving Vigor, Restoring Focus, Living Dark, and your burst heal is Rally. So the offensive rotation is you're going to buff up like always. You're going to put your rune down and your Extended Ritual, your house, build your house along with Shuffle, get that Major Evasion going. Now you're going to switch to your front bar and make sure Rally's up for your weapon damage and your Living Dark is up before you charge in. That's going to give you about a 5-second window for offense, and that's typically what you want to do is dive in for that 5 seconds, pull back out. You're going to look at a target and try to light it up with Power of the Light, marking it, and that's who you're going to charge to, doing Stampede. Once you get close range in Stampede, usually I see, okay, did I take 3/4 of the person's life away or not? If I did and they're really squishy, I hit them with the Crescent Sweep, then throttle down with the biting jabs. If they survive that because they use an ultimate or something else, typically Power of the Light's going to go off and blow them up. And that's pretty much it. Then you kind of peel back, make sure Living Dark's back up. As soon as you take pressure, what you do is you make sure you Extended Ritual, get rid of all those negative effects. You're going to use Shuffle to get rid of those nasty mobilizations, and then Resolving Vigor. Make sure you switch to your front offensive bar because you have 2 important heals on there. Living Dark, so if you're taking pressure over time, it's going to proc heals, and along with your burst heal Rally. And then if people are still beating on you, make sure you reverberate and bash them off because that will keep pressure off of you, allowing you to get healed back up, get into a comfortable spot. Now let's talk about the champion points. And so what I go with is 2 offensive ones and then 2 defensive ones. So Duelist Rebuff is going to reduce your damage by a single target. Ironclad, reduce damage, direct damage, and then it's up to you. Master of Arms is really good, increasing your direct damage, which is almost pretty much everything. And then you have a flexible one. Something that I like to use is Untamed Aggression, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 3 per point. And the reason why is our proc set scales off of weapon damage along with the amps for weapon damage. Next, we're going to switch to the fitness tree. Celerity is going to increase our movement speed and make us very, very survivable. And then I'm going to go with Slippery. Slippery is going to give us a free CC break. You can either either use Slippery or Expert Evasion. The other two I go with is Fortification, give us a little bit more armor, and Boundless Vitality, well, to give us more health. The green tree really isn't going to affect too much, so I'm going to go with Treasurer, Rationer, Liquid Efficiency, and Steed's Blessing. Next up is the racial choice, and what should you go with? I think Orc is the obvious choice here. It's going to give us everything we want. A little bit of max health, a little bit of max stamina, but it's going to give us that speed, and that's really what we want in weapon damage. Another option is Imperial. It's going to have a reduced cost, red diamond passive, and a lot of max stats. That's an alternative that I'd go with. Munda Stones, we're going to go with the increased weapon damage Warrior, and the reason why is we do not need sustain with the Serpent, since we're going to go with Wretched Vitality and a bunch of different food choices. Speaking of food choices, you can go with the Artarium's Takeaway Broth for increased health and stamina recovery. If you go the Daedric Trickery route, try Smoked Bear Haunch. That's going to give you a lot of max health and increased recovery across the board, because you will need some magic recovery. The potions you can run are either Tri-Push potions or immovable potions. Immovable potions aren't going to have the health associated with it, so when you need a heal, you're not going to get it, but what's going to give you is a little bit of speed, a little bit of stamina, and a few seconds of immobilization. So when you charge in, if you pop this, especially using Clever Alchemist, your burst window is significantly higher. And for poisons, you're going to want to have the Escapist poisons on your back bar. This is very expensive, but it's going to prevent you from getting CC'd, and it's going to CC and immobilize them, locking them in place for a perfect biting jab spam. Well, gang, that's the build. What do you think? Leave me a comment. Hit that like, subscribe if you like these type of content, and specifically showing you the gameplay, because I play these on stream so you can actually see them being used. Is this perfect build? I don't know, but I think it works right now, especially with the Dragonknight meta, which leads me to believe I need to get on the Dragonknight along with my Magic Templar. Anyways, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next build.